Thank you. The chair recognizes Representative Johnson for 5 minutes.
Mr. Secretary, first off, I would thank you for the positive comments you've made about the Ocean Shipping Reform Act that Mr. Garamendi and I helped to usher through the House, and so thank you for your support of that. We've talked a lot about ports so far today, and I think that'll help. It's not a silver bullet, but I think it'll help. When you appeared before this committee last year, you and I had a productive conversation about siting and about how the same type of project that would take 2 years to get sited in highway project in France or in Germany, on average would take 7.5 years in America, which is clearly not evidence of American exceptionalism, and in fact makes it harder to have American exceptionalism present itself. You had talked then about some of the things that we can do. I think you said to move aspiration into action. Are we making any progress on that front, and do you see room for additional leadership by this Congress in helping make it easier for us to do large projects?
Well, first of all, let me acknowledge and thank you for your work on the Bipartisan Ocean Shipping Reform Act. It's another thing I should have mentioned just now in my earlier answer of something that we think will make progress on when it comes to shipping and supply chains. And to your question, yes, I think we've made progress, and yes, I agree. There's much more work to be done. The comparisons to Europe are especially important, I think, because we're talking about countries that are certainly rigorous in their labor standards and in their environmental standards, and yet consistently seem to be able to deliver projects at a lower cost and at a swifter timeline than tends to happen in the U.S. Some of the things we've done in this regard include increasing our visibility on what's going on with permitting. So the permitting dashboard is our main tool for doing that. And enacting the one federal decision related provisions that were in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that's included matching up the categorical exclusions that our department can join to with other agencies when there's some interagency question. And making sure that we have a game plan for how to hit those averages called for, the 2-year average, for the kinds of environmental review that many of our projects are subject to. But we recognize this is going to be a big ship to turn, and welcome all opportunities for good faith collaboration on how to do it without, of course, diminishing community voices or environmental or other important labor, other important policy considerations, but having a pace and a cost of getting through these processes that I think is what most Americans would expect.
Yeah, and one of the things I struggle with is, and this is true whether we're talking high voltage transmission lines or highways, people will talk about how long it takes to get something sited, and then I will tell them, okay, bring me the specific knob we can turn, right? And I'm sure you ask the same question. Because there are so many factors that slow down these processes, it can be hard to figure out what button do you push or what lever do you pull. So it's a bit of an unfair question for me to ask you, but as you review all of these myriad things that make it difficult to get big projects done in this country, is there one piece that we should focus our collective fire on? One or two specific things we could be working together?
I think, as you noted, there's not a silver bullet here, but I do think there are a few directions that'll be productive to look in. One is the capacity of the project sponsor, so making sure that they have the tools they need to navigate these processes, especially because if we're successful in bringing investments to jurisdictions that haven't had much before, maybe small rural jurisdictions or low-income areas that just haven't done much with the federal process, we can't expect them on day one to know how to navigate it. So I think the support and the technical assistance there is going to be important. Second, of course, is to make the processes simpler in the first place. It's one of the reasons you see us combining some of our notices of funding opportunity and even combining the selection process, just to have less paper and fewer steps involved by virtue of having fewer programs on parallel tracks. I think visibility matters. That's why we think that the dashboard, I know it's a readout, not a mandate, but I actually think it could play an important role because it'll just help us spot some of these issues. We're trying to make sure we are combining the final EIS and the record of decision to make sure that there's not a big gap between those. We've also pursued the integration of some of the permitting processes with the NEPA side of it, because we think some of those things can travel together too. So I'm afraid I don't have a sense of one or two things that would make all the difference, but anything and everything that we can do consistent with our bedrock commitments, we're certainly open to exploring.
Mr. Secretary, thanks. And then, Mr. Chairman, by way of closing, I would just note that this is a serious problem. I mean, nobody would suggest that European countries flout environmental or labor standards. They are able to get it done in 2 years. Frankly, America should be able to get these projects done in that kind of time frame as well, and I thank the Secretary for his efforts.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Mr. Lynch for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Mr. Secretary. Good to see you.